I am welcoming all of you to another episode of the Sacred Travel Podcast. Today, we have an enchanting and magical topic, the Dragon Rose Magdalene Path of Southern France. And I am welcoming my dear guest and former mentor, Achintya Devi.
Mm,
Achintya
Thank you.
has a wisdom. Achintya is a wisdom keeper of the Rose Priestess Lineage and founder of Goddess Rising Mystery School. She is an internationally renowned teacher, ceremonialist, and mentor. Her trainings, devotionals, and sacred site pilgrimages are devoted to empowering women to embody their soul essence in life, leadership, and the Priestess Path. Achintya guides priestess pilgrimages to southern France upon the sacred lands where Mary Magdalene's ministry flourished. She has a deep love and affinity for the area that is a living temple and a soul home for her. Welcome, welcome, Achintya. I am so excited to have you and to speak about this magical, magical landscape.
Thank you, Julia, so much for having me. It's such a delight.
So, the landscape that we are talking about today in the south of France is so rich in history, rich in symbolism, rich in medicine of personal and collective gnosis. And just that we give a little bit of an understanding and a background to all the listeners, can you speak into the historical significance of the landscape with relation to the Rose lineage and also the Cathars?
Yeah, I would love to. Oh, wow. I'm just thinking about some of the first times that I, in my heart, felt this really powerful call to France, and and then the discovery and the remembrance over time. And so, just giving the background that in part of my journey, I began to hear the rose line in my internal clear audience. And I was like, okay, that was there. And it really grew stronger and stronger, with really guided by Mary Magdalene and my connection with her, and that evolving remembrance that was some decades of then what came to be, and what I could recognize was a Rose lineage. It was something that I hadn't heard of before, but it was through gnosis that was remembered. And now, many years later, recognizing that this is a very powerful ancient lineage that has deep, deep, deep connection with Magdalene and so many other incredible guides, predecessors before. And so when we look to this part of southern France, it to me is really a aspect of the relationship of many different star temples around the world, and specifically with the Rose lineage, what was happening for me, and even from a young girl, when I was a young girl and I lived in England, I had this deep connection with Egypt. So for me, there was always this Avalon to Egypt connection. In the center, I was like, France is a major role. It has to be. And I had gone as a teenager, and I grew up speaking French. So there's all these pieces and, rose petals that were laid along the journey. And so throughout time, the experience of and remembrance of these lands has very much to do with her when she had to flee Israel, Palestine, at the timing of great tension in that period with Yeshua, her beloved, and the incredible feat that it was for her to continue these sacred teachings of the way of love prior to what we know of now as the Christian or Catholic Church, or all the denominations. So we're talking about the experience of the way of love that is a path of gnosis, a pathway of teachings, that essentially is to be lived upon the earth and in connection with the heavens as love. And so this part of southern France is where Mary Magdalene fled to. It is where she arrived in exile, and there are many different legends of who was accompanying her at that time. And essentially, from her landing in this town, which now is known as Sainte Marie de la Mer, her journey throughout what was then Gaul, before it was France, is really where her ministry did flourish. And in this way, this was prior to what we know of as churches. This would have been at a time where teachings were given in caves, upon the earth, in deep, deep connection with the elements. And so it's throughout this landscape that there is great vortices, ley lines converging. There are fault lines converging. So there's a very powerful electromagnetism in the landscape itself. And that's really primarily my connection with Magdalene is through the wild rose landscape of southern France. And this, in turn, over hundreds, many hundreds of years until the early 1200s, we can say maybe 1100s to 1200s, 1300s, is where we see this resurgence of the way of love through those that were known as the Cathars. And so we have this incredible history and her story of the way of love, these teachings to be spread far and wide. And again, at that time was when there was a great inquisition from Rome to exterminate all of the Cathars. So that repeat of history, which would have been, through their perspective, heresy, that these teachings were not aligned with their church, which is, of course, the power over church.
Power over.
And so there was a lot of death. And also there's the energy of continued faith and resilience and sacred rebellion and mystical teachings, really, of the truth of who we are. And essentially the path of gnosis, that God, Goddess, Source, Spirit is inside each and every one of us as sovereign beings and in communion with Spirit, in communion with one another, that does not require the institution of the church for there to be knowing. So that's why there's a lot of, energetic controversy or tension that was there. So that's a kind of sort of a tidbit of a person and a collective her story, brief aspect through that lensing Mary Magdalene.
Wow, that is a lot. It was kind of like fast forward through history and her story, but I think it it really helps to set the stage. And I love how you spoke about that way of love, because actually one of my questions was that I thought about while preparing is, in what way do you feel that the consciousness that is imprinted in this landscape really inspires to live the way of love?
That's such a beautiful question. Wow. Okay, there's a few things that come to mind. So when we think of that idea of gnosis, right, this is then to know thyself. This was the premise for all the ancient mystery schools. And it still stands to this day. And to know thyself is a journey. When one knows thyself, then it's part of that recognition is that the I is the small I, the person, and then the I that is the consciousness of the one. We just bring that concept here because then with that, we place that into the landscape. We place that into the rivers. We place that into the stones. We place that high up to the mountain peaks, deep into the dragon caves and the subterranean waterways that are moving through all of France. And that brings about the consciousness of self, which is sovereign. I am whole and holy unto myself. And yet there's another part of the equation, which is, and I am also in communion with all that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So being in communion with the elements where there is consciousness, it's living life. Specifically with stone. Stone holds memory. Stone holds vibration. And so it's an access point to remember. When we place our own electromagnetic energy and we commune with the elements, we commune with the sacred stones, there is information that can be received. There is the opening into gnosis, perhaps into past lives, deep connection with Magdalene, connection with the Cathars, connection with a whole assortment of sacred guides that are that were and are in relationship with Mary Magdalene, including Mother Mary, including her daughter, including many Marys, this Mary lineage, the Rose lineage. And so in my experience, this aspect of communion also is in sisterhood. And that is one of the primary ways and why, I'm bringing women, students, sisters to these lands for those that are ready, for those that are devoted to really furthering their knowledge, their wisdom, their embodiment as love, to serve in this time, to contribute in this time. We come together, and I like to call it like a constellation, just how stars have a constellation. There's always a unique constellation.
Yes, I can feel that.
And just side note, and this too, Julia has come on one of the Priestess Pilgrimages to Egypt with me and my dear sister, Sarah Naya Soleil, and also again with her. So this and can attest to this through experience too, and in your own journeys, where when we come together as a group of people, and in this case, in sisterhood, we bring forth all of our unique gifts. We bring forth our energy, our collective devotion, where then there is another amplification and portal for consciousness, for communion to be exchanged. I love being on solo pilgrimage. I love inviting that for other people, the honoring and respecting that. And there's a time for solo pilgrimage and there's a time for group pilgrimage. Of course, within the group pilgrimage, there's always solo time as well. But when we're in a sacred container with agreements and an anchoring, a rootedness, we support and amplify each other's prayers for our personal paths and for our collective. So our own unique electromagnetic field literally is amplified. The auric vibration is stronger. And in this way, with sacred intention, being able to direct this, being able to offer this. So I always feel that it's a pilgrimage that is personal, it is a pilgrimage that is communal, and it's a pilgrimage that is collective. And so we're really offering this for the betterment of all of humanity. I'll pause right there.
Agree 100%. And maybe just as an addition, what I have come to experience also, there is always the outer pilgrimage and then there is the inner pilgrimage that are reflecting or mirroring each other likewise. So yeah, definitely.
A very important key, very deep, that is the whole premise, is that the pilgrimage is the outer and how that reflects the inner, and then how the inner can reflect the outer, and the incredible synchronicities and divine timing that takes place where something from the outside, an image, a sound, is happening in that exact same moment where you're having a thought or a feeling, and there is that sacred communion, there is reflection. It's an active relating with spirit in form.
I love that. Yeah. So coming back again to from the experience, like going back really into the medicine of the landscape. So you've spoken a little bit about the part where like Mary Magdalene landed, and then there is also another landscape around Montségur and the chateaus. It's kind of like four counterparts that is very unique in its shape and also symbolism, because it is known as this star temple carrying the sacred geometry of the pentagram as the celestial rose. And I would love for you to speak a little bit into what that is all about. And I know it's a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. And I love that question. That's part of what I share in Priestesses of the Rose is this deep connection with Mary Magdalene and therefore her in the Venusian pathway. So I'll go from a more broad perspective. When you look at the landscape of southern France, there's really an arc line of dragon energy that exists in my experience from east to, or from west to east, east to west, that is all around the Camargue region. So that's the region where she landed. And there's one of her famous cave that is more to the east, which is La Sainte Baume. And then we have this area all around the Camargue, and then over to the west. And so when we go over to the west, there are incredible mountains. These are the famous Pyrenees, the Pyrenees. And also you go a little bit further north, and those are the Midi Pyrenees. So these are like, meaning like half Pyrenees. So it's in this very powerful region where we do have this coming together of ley lines. We have a coming together of fault lines. So we're seeing there within the landscape, there is the merging of literally the tectonic plates of the earth from a geomineral visualization of actually seeing this. We have this then through the energetics of that move through that specific formation. And within that, we have these great mountains. And below the mountains, we have incredible subterranean waterways. So I want to take you down this little bit of road. There's one more, but this one where I'm going here is there's a recognition through this landscape that I had, which is an ancient technology that is literally just living within the earth. And it has been replicated in different ways, which are the stone circles. When we go up to the UK, it's been replicated in ancient Egypt. And this is essentially the merging together of water from the great below and then stone, just like these crystal pillars here.
Yeah.
And so when you bring together the water and the stone in this way, there is, and it's been scientifically studied and tested and proven again and again, where there is an amplified electromagnetic current. And so when we bring water and stone together in this way with sacred intention, with clear intentions, pure heart, that we meet that energy. So our own energy meets that energy, and that becomes that opening, that portal into expanded state of consciousness, we can say. There's many different ways to express that concept.
Yeah.
And so it's been my experience through the landscape here on top of the high peaks and also within them in the caves where these vibrations are amplified. And within that, there's, I kind of like to think of it as, you go to a sacred site and you are contributing your prayers, your whatever's alive within your heart, your offerings, you're coming as the living offering. And what happens is that you're then also picking up the amplified energy of the pilgrims that have come before.
Yeah.
And so in this way, we're connected. It's like, I just thought of this too. It's like if there was a prayer wheel and it's like, okay, I'm spinning this wheel and then I leave and then it keeps going for a little bit and somebody else comes and it's like, okay, then they keep the prayer wheel spinning. So, so that's one aspect at the caves, at the mountain peaks, which have very, different frequencies, but they're connected. But this is also stone. So this is picking up. It's like I've picked up the songs and the hums and the words, echoes through time. I'm like, oh, this was a Cathar woman. This was a Cathar man, where the existence of the time-space continuum, it all, collapses into the present
Yeah.
moment. And so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
access point into the Akashic records, that access point into communion with the angels, with the dragon beings, with spirits and guides that reside there.
Mm.
So that's one of the ways that is quite primary, which has to no end great, great blessings personally and again collectively. So it's a technology then through prayer that can be utilized to direct, to amplify. Much more than what could happen, let's say, if we're just at home by ourselves. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, there's power in prayer no matter where we are. But when we're specifically in that field of energy, that's where there is that amplification. And so there are certain peaks and mountains there that are an open pathway, we can say, or portal of celestial energy and other off-earth beings, benevolent beings who are really supporting to work with that energy for this great awakening that is happening upon the earth right now. There's also ways that I've recognized that there's portals into inner earth in these areas as well.
Mm-hmm.
And these were specific places where the Essenes were. So meaning there's this lineage of Gnosticism, the Essenes who came, prior to Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, but they are of that lineage. And then part of these teachings of Yeshua, of Magdalene, that have really continued. And in this landscape, even prior to that, we have, these incredible megaliths that are more hidden. They exist there, showing us and indicating that that they were here long, 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 even before the timeline in which we are speaking of. So from time immemorial, right? This is that in the mystery here of how long this has really been a place of, I don't just want to say worship, but of gathering and really honored as a living temple. So that's one aspect. And then there's the celestial rose aspect, but I can pause there if you want to, chime in.
Yeah, maybe let's take a deep breath to soak that all in because it's a lot. And while you were speaking, I just found it so fascinating because I feel that there's probably many people who have visited the area already or who have had a call. But it's almost then if we know about that sacred layer on top, it's just the significance that it all has. And the part of the remembrance and reclamation that we get through I want to say like participating in that sacredness of that living temple, it's just yeah, beyond. So wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one thing to visit and to be a tourist, and which can oftentimes, sort of layer seeds for another time. And then it is
Yeah.
another to really go with, deep intention. And I think also what can very much happen is for people who have a connection there spiritually, they also may have a connection through their bloodline. And
Mm.
so that's the case for me in both ways. And I think for what I've recognized for a lot of people, since we're speaking about France, who may not be from that region, that they've grown up there, but they have ancestry there. This goes the same for me with Scotland. It's like it's when you go to a place where your blood has come from, where your ancestors lived, but you don't live there, there is something quite profound that happens. And there's a real relinking of that sense of belonging, that sense of connection. And, in my own experience, very indescribable layers of just homecoming and a deeper, again, know thyself. And of course, there's people who have no connection with bloodline, but do through a spirit lineage, or they are, have a calling, and that is just as important. So being connected, wow, this is really fascinating. Just two geese just swarmed right around. They're flying there. They're saying hello. And then the other piece with that is really, having that understanding, as you were mentioning, or inner standing, that this is a potentiality. And just like any other sacred site, you're going to have an experience. And then you go again, and you can go again and again, and other layers continue to reveal themselves and open up in divine timing, if it's meant to be, and that has definitely been my experience over decades, and really my whole life, actually, of travel, because I've lived all around the world from a very young age, is that, so it's like, for me personally, the connection with the earth and these sacred places is just, it's a part of my astrology chart. It's a part of my life, part of my work. It's a part of my purpose. And so just like you're also getting to know someone. It's just like you and I are going to go have tea, and then we have another date, and then we have another connection, and we get to know one another. It's the same there, and with any sacred site and place or landscape, where there are new ways of knowing and connection and relating.
Yeah, completely. And I also feel that, there is this frequency match, that when you physically travel to these places, almost as if a switch like comes alive in your cells, and especially when there is a blood lineage connection to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can share about the rose now, because you were asked specifically.
Yes, please.
So let's see, this kind of goes again to my journey of remembrance, and that I was telling you, it's like, oh, the rose line, and this connection that the rose is essentially, it is in connection with Venus. The rose is one of the sacred symbols for Magdalene, for the goddess of this lineage, which has deep and ancient connections from the great goddess Tiamat, the dragon goddess, all the way down through Egypt and into France and to Avalon and to Scotland. This lineage that came from essentially Venus to the earth, the time of Lemuria and Atlantis. So this is an ancient lineage that exists. This is what it was like, wow, okay, this is what I remembered. And within that remembering, in my research and in my longing to continue to keep stepping on this trail of rose petals. And so just giving timeline, this is like, probably like 20, I mean, it happened even earlier, but like we can say like 2010 onward, where it really amplified. This longing to, sorry, I was just like finding that there's like so much here of like three thoughts. So in recognizing, we go to this place which I shared of like feeling this relationship between Avalon and Egypt. It's like, okay, France is in the middle here. France plays a major role. And so it was really in my connection with Magdalene that she guided me. It's like, here, you need to come here. This is the rose. This is the rose. And so what I discovered from being on the landscape, and also then finding, bless his heart, he has now passed. I feel like he's like a lineage keeper that I never met, and the work of Henry Lincoln. And he's an incredible author. And he really was on this trail as well. And so I feel like I somehow like stepped into this realm of, oh, wow, this exists. But I only know that it exists now through my inner landscape and now seeing, wow, you're sharing this. So I remember finding online just like this tiny map, and I couldn't even read it and see exactly where it was, but it was in southern France, and it was sharing about how, there's a star formation that's here. So I was like, I have to go here. So in my experience of being there was tracking and looking through where he had too, and then my own experiences of where you can put the measurements of creating a pentagram. So it's important. Why this is so important with a precise pentagram is because the pentagram, meaning the 5, is exactly connected to the 5 synodic cycles that Venus has over an 8-year period. So over an 8-year period, the incredible pentagram, which I call the celestial rose, takes place in the sky, and that is the map upon the earth. So I was like, okay, I am home, and
Wow.
it truly, truly, truly was and am and are when I'm there. And it is this, again, this deep mystical teaching, as above, so below. And so the celestial rose in the sky, mapping the celestial rose upon the earth. And in those moments, way back when, it's like, oh my goddess, this is real. Like, this is like just the deepest love of in my heart. And so, each of those points, right, is significant too, because when you look to Venus's cycle, those points of the pentagram represent when she's coming into the certain specific conjunctions with the sun. So it is this ancient pathway that is astronomical, that is astrological, that is mythological, and that is literally upon the landscape of the earth. And so it's this is how the Rose Lineage is a very much lived pathway. And this is something that Magdalene was a part of, that Magdalene knew, that Magdalene lived. And I will just say that in this region, there have been these incredible legends where before she came, there was prophecy that there would be great beings that would come again to this land. And so there was preparation, there was a knowing. And in my heart of hearts, I feel like I knew, like Magdalene knew where she was going. And of course, her journey didn't, just, end in France. She has deep roots and connection with Avalon and with the Isles in Scotland. And so it's like this whole rose pathway continues. And yeah, so it's in this landscape here where, yeah, it's my soul home. It's like, it's my rose home. It's where I have the deepest connection with Magdalene through the elements and everything that I was sharing before. And so for those that are remembering the Rose Priestess Path as well, this is like, okay, we go here to the living space and place. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I guess so many people who are listening or watching are already like, wow, this is mind blowing. Like, I didn't know about it.
It's not very, very well known. And I'm definitely conscious too and trusting that the people that will be listening to this, it's meant for their ears and it's not meant for everybody's ears. And there's also, many places which sort of like I can share this one layer and then there's so many other layers, but that's for each pilgrim to discover. It takes the magic out if I were to share. It's also just not my place to share. But it's like I can give that broader sense, and there's so many deeper, intricacies and sacred places, and that's really the beauty of the path, right? It's to have those moments of self-discovery.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that is actually a good segue into the next question, because I would love for you to share a little bit about your own experience. So how did walking these sacred lands and the caves, the mountains, like everything that you just shared about support your personal embodiment of the way of love and the priestess path?
Yeah. Thank you. I really feel like that question, like it lands into, well, we can say the holy of the holies. And so for those of you that don't know this terminology and it's the most inner sanctum. When we go on pilgrimage in Egypt, there are these 7 levels that we must walk through, which is also connected with Venus, to enter into the holy of the holies. This would be the place where the priest or the high priestess would go to, and it's where the great statue is of the deity of Het, Hathor, or Isis, etc. And so it really is that real tender and sacred inner place. And so for me, that is where, that's what it is for me when I'm there. It's like entering into the holy of the holies within my heart space on the inner pilgrimage, and then in the landscape. And so I have, experiences too where it's remembering again, or it's feeling like, yeah, I have been here. There's a real merging for me of the ancient and the future when I'm there, and how my past is connected there, but also how my future is connected there, which I'm constantly living into, and that's revealing itself through me. And again, it's the returning again and again of making devotions and intentionally being there to commune. It's like, okay, what's this chapter going to be? Okay, and then what is this chapter going to be? And this is reflected through me too with some of the sacred places where it's like, okay, I'm being guided here, and really on the quest, or it's sort of like the pilgrimage within the pilgrimage to a specific site. And what happens in that, in the inner landscape that's being reflected in the outer landscape. So I know that there's a real sacred space that I had heard about, and a specific cave, really, really sacred to Mary Magdalene. And so I was like, okay, I have these sort of broad directions, and I'm needing to really attune my inner compass. And remember going on this long, quest, even then recognizing later that I had just like passed it, but I had felt something there, and then had been like, okay, this is like, maybe it's for another day. Like, this is my path of surrender. And then did arrive and find it, just as what probably would have been, because upon entering into this cave, there was a candle that was lit. And so I recognized also in that moment, okay, somebody else was probably here right when I was there feeling that. And it was that guidance to like, nope, we're going to have them have their space, and then they're going to exit and you're going to enter. And so that, okay, that lesson, or that embodied experience of divine timing and trust and surrender. So that's, one example of experience. I think from my whole life, I've been one that like learned from experiential education, right? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
having that land. And for me, it's been a real experience too of listening and hearing Magdalene, because she is the one that is the overlighting guide for me in this lifetime, where she's like, okay, these are the next steps for your mission. These are the next steps, which was the unfolding to create, priestesses of the rose. That's the unfolding for a lot that is actually still to come. And so it's sort of where I also will receive like my next divine directives. Not that it's just like she's telling me what to do, but it's like, here, look at this. And then that discovery, okay, through that inspiration, through that devotion and the commitment, it's like, here's the next pathway.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like it's all merged with my personal connection with her, but then how this also is in my work of sharing, these teachings, or sharing the wisdom, or providing the experiences for ones who have their own experience of gnosis. And that's really what I'm devoted to, is to cultivating and crafting experiences so that women can really have that sacred remembrance that lies within. Sort of like, I'm just thinking of it this way too. It's like bringing all these ingredients together to create this incredible, which are like keys to open and to unlock. So
Yeah.
there can be deeper experiences of remembrance, of healing, of inner guidance. And, over years and years of pilgrimages and guiding women to these sacred places, and together, this is where there has been, wow, lifelong friendships. There have been the deepest of prayers that have been answered time and time again, hearing women share, it is through this trip that I called in my beloved, and now I'm getting married, and now I'm having a child, or I got the clarity. Now I'm meant to leave this partner. Now I'm meant to, open into this line of work, and really support transformation for women to come into their sacred, true, aligned, and resonant self. So I think the pilgrimages really simultaneously can clear out and create a death, in a way, of all that is not in alignment, to unbecome what one has thought to be, to then get repaired and remembered on the right pathway for oneself. And so that's one of the things that that takes place through pilgrimage. It's absolutely astounding.
It does. It is definitely the heroine's journey in so many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I can share too. There's been, a few, well, many actually, places where it's really where, and I do have an astrological line that runs near there as well. And so there's this vacation for me of where I have great expansion. I have great joy.
Mm.
And also where there's an aspect of regalness as well. And my connection with the winged lions, my connection with the dragons, my connection with the dove, and these, mythological beings who are living guides on the
Yeah.
Rose Priestess Path. And so that's been another deep, deep layer for me. And always, I think it's like when I enter, there's always, and this is like, it's clear intention and no expectation. And that is forever the mantra. And that's the way to, have the doorways open if they're meant to be. And so it's just like that deep trust and that deep surrender and the faith. The pilgrimages represent the larger, it's like the microcosm of the great
Mm-hmm.
journey, the heron's
Mm-hmm.
journey is shared. And so, I've had experiences of awe and wonder of places that I haven't, that I had not yet been to. And again, it's like, oh, and then next journeys, another place is shared and revealed, and people and stories and connections. So I feel such a resonance in this area where the star temple above and below upon the earth, and then deep, deep below, comes alive for me. And I'm just like, okay, yes, this is like, I'm home. This is my soul home, and I'm in the temple. And it's like in different places, there's like the portals within the portals. Like, okay, I'm going to,
Oh, wow.
to,
Yeah.
to this place, and it like opens up, a pathway or a opening into this vibration. Or it's like, oh, and what's behind door number 2? What's behind door number 3? And I've just had, and I've had experiences where I have been on this, for example, this time last year, it was part of my personal time before the group. And so it was in these caves, and then thought the journey was complete. And she was like, no, you need to go up to this mountain. And I was like, okay, yeah, I do. And I didn't know why. but I had this 4x4 Jeep and I would have never made it. I mean, this was like a really precarious, like I would never bring the ladies on this kind of because it's too much. I'm like, I cannot be responsible for this. But I was going up these rocky, burly roads in this Jeep, like going to as far as you can go. And then, the pathway, even higher by foot. And I was like, okay, I've got this amount of time that I have before the sun sets. It's late in the summer. I arrive and it's like, okay, this is why I'm here. I'm like, okay. And I had received like this was a place that was devoted for this, like as sun worship, or as connection here.
Mm-hmm.
There, like, oh, Magdalene shared here. There were teachings here. There was ceremony here. And, I had the call, like, you need to go and you need to offer this and you need to offer this. And so sort of like it's beyond me too. It's like how I can help to be of service
Yeah.
of another mission that wants to be, that needs to happen, that I maybe don't know all the details, but know that it's, okay, I'm here of service. And that just, I mean, it fills my heart. And that adventure, I just, I have a Sagittarius moon. And so that part of me, that adventure is just like the sacred quest, it's like, I love
I'm the
it.
Sagittarius sun. I can relate
Yes, you do.
100%.
Yeah, so for all you Sagittarius out there, it's like, you know what I'm talking about.
Definitely. And it's really like, yeah, being that vessel for spirit to move through and allowing to happen whatever needs to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for also giving that personal touch. I always feel that this is very, yeah, very enlightening. And you're going back in just a couple of weeks, actually. So that's going to be very exciting. And you're taking two groups this time.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Ah,
So at the time of this recording, we will be there during a very powerful timeline where Venus will be changing from her morning star phase into her evening star phase. So it's a real conscious journey to be within the sacred celestial rose pentagram at the turning of the phases. So that's that's during one of the pilgrimages, and then the other one is during the full moon of summer solstice. So for me,
mm,
I'm always co-creating. There's always the sacred timelines of when we're going, because that is informing what is taking place on the journey. And so
yeah.
there's the known of, okay, certain things are known, and there's so much that's unknown. And so it's this incredible dance of, of both, and, what will arise, but yet the themes that are here. So we can, consciously be aware of that in the space. Mhm. And I will just say, it's so much fun. It's so fun. It's like so fun.
Are you going to be driving the Jeep too?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be a Jeep, but it could well be. Yeah. Have a sacred caravan. That's right. Yeah.
Ah, well, so many blessings for the pilgrimages. And you shared with me up front that both of them are already full. But I guess if there is anyone who is now really, really intrigued, please reach out to Achintya. We are going to be putting all the links in the show notes for future pilgrimages.
Yeah. Yeah. We will be continuing as long as, well, who knows, but there's definitely, yeah, a part of my sacred, my personal sacred travel, sacred work, sacred offering, etc. So yeah, if you feel the call, then we're always welcoming applications.
Yeah, no, I can feel you're on a mission. So, is there any final words of wisdom that want to be shared?
Oh my goodness. Well, I just want to give reverence to, yeah, to this pathway that has been revealed to me and that I'm a part of, to those who came before, to all of the Cathars. the Cathars, who have had incredible resilience for really keeping to their faith and um, to be, yeah, in that sacred resilience and their devotion to the way of love, um, to the ways of the Essenes, to Mary Magdalene, to Mother Mary, to Sarah Tamar, to all the sacred masculine guides, Joseph of Arimathea, all the incredible pathways of the Cathars. Just really want to give reverence to, and to my friends and comrades who reside or also go visit and pilgrimage to the sacred place. Just it's so precious. And I think the last thing of sharing is like with any sacred place that we go to, that we're guided to trust in that, because there's always a reason why, even though you may not know what it is at the time, and to leave a trail of light, to offer and to leave in a good way, so that there can be respect to the land, and to these sacred places for our world. Yeah.
Thank you. I have so much gratitude for this conversation and for you coming online and sharing all of this. It was really so incredible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yeah, so many blessings for you and the ladies on pilgrimage.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you so much for prompting these powerful questions, and congratulations on this podcast. And may this serve in the best and the highest and greatest for all beings.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.